What if I told you that hidden within the ancient Hebrew text of Daniel lies a mathematical code so precise, so divinely orchestrated, that it reveals the exact timeline of Jesus Christ's return to earth? Cahn, the renowned prophetic voice who shocked the world with his revelations about the Harbinger and the Shemitah, has uncovered something that will shake the very foundations of your faith. This isn't speculation or religious theory. This is biblical mathematics that has been sealed for centuries, waiting for this generation to decode its mysteries. The same God who established the heavens and the earth with mathematical precision has embedded within Daniel's prophecy a countdown that's been ticking for over 2 millennia. Right now, as you're watching this video, we are living in the final moments of this divine timeline. The signs are everywhere, the pieces are falling into place, and the code Cahn discovered proves we are closer to the second coming than anyone dared to imagine. Every number, every date, every historical event has been orchestrated to point to this moment in history. The rabbis knew something was hidden in Daniel's text, but they couldn't crack the code. Early church fathers sensed the mathematical patterns, but lacked the historical perspective we now possess. Today, for the first time in human history, we have all the pieces needed to understand what God sealed in Daniel's prophecy. This revelation will change everything you thought you knew about biblical prophecy and the return of Jesus Christ. The implications are staggering. The timeline is precise, and the urgency is real. What you're about to discover will either terrify you or fill you with incredible hope, depending on where you stand with God. The clock is ticking, and the code has been cracked. Those who understand the signs of the times recognize truth when they hear it. Hit that like button right now, because this revelation needs to reach every believer on earth. Subscribe and ring the notification bell, because what's coming next will shake the prophetic community to its core. Cahn's journey into Daniel's secret code began with a simple question that haunted him for years. Why did Daniel seal his prophecy until the time of the end? The answer lies in something so profound that it literally gave Cahn chills when he first discovered it. Deep within Daniel chapter 9, embedded in the famous prophecy of the 70 weeks, exists a mathematical pattern that creates a perfect timeline stretching from ancient Babylon to the present day. But here's what will blow your mind. This isn't just about weeks and years. It's about divine appointments that God predetermined before the foundation of the world. Cahn discovered that the Hebrew word for weeks in Daniel's prophecy doesn't just mean 7 days. It represents complete cycles of divine judgment and restoration. Each cycle corresponds to major historical events that shaped the destiny of Israel and the world. The first cycle pointed to the rebuilding of Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. The second cycle predicted the exact year of Jesus' first coming and crucifixion. But the third cycle, the one that remained sealed until now, reveals the timeline for his return. What makes this discovery so extraordinary is that it doesn't rely on human interpretation or speculation. The mathematics are so precise that they eliminate any possibility of coincidence. Every major event in Jewish history, from the destruction of the temple to the rebirth of Israel, falls exactly where the code predicted it would. The Holocaust, the Six-Day War, the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, all of these events were mathematically predetermined and embedded in Daniel's prophecy. Cahn realized that we're not just reading ancient history, we're looking at God's divine calendar. And according to this calendar, we're living in the final countdown. The code reveals that certain prophetic milestones had to be reached before the final cycle could begin, and incredibly, all of those milestones have now been fulfilled. This means we're not just approaching the end times, we're already in them. The precision of this code is undeniable. Comment sealed if you're ready to have your understanding of biblical prophecy completely transformed. The breakthrough moment came when Cahn realized that Daniel's prophecy operates on multiple levels simultaneously, like a divine symphony with harmonies that span millennia. On the surface level, it speaks of weeks and years, but beneath that lies a deeper mathematical structure that reveals God's master plan for human history. This discovery changed everything because it proved that biblical prophecy isn't symbolic or metaphorical, it's mathematically precise. The Hebrew calendar, which most people dismiss as outdated, actually contains the key to unlocking this code. God didn't use the Roman calendar or the modern Gregorian system. He used his own perfect timing mechanism, one that accounts for both lunar and solar cycles in ways that create prophetic patterns. When Cahn applied this Hebrew calendar system to Daniel's prophecy, the results were staggering. Historical events that seemed random or coincidental suddenly revealed themselves as precisely timed divine appointments. The destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, the expulsion of Jews from Spain, the Russian pogroms, the rise of Nazi Germany, all of these tragedies occurred at mathematically predictable intervals according to Daniel's code. But here's what makes this discovery so urgent. The same mathematical precision that predicted these past events also reveals the timing of future events, including the return of Jesus Christ. The code shows that we're living in what Cahn calls the convergence period, where multiple prophetic timelines intersect simultaneously. This isn't just about one prophecy coming to pass. It's about the culmination of every major biblical prophecy, reaching its fulfillment in our generation. The restoration of Israel, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the emergence of a global government system, the persecution of Christians worldwide. All of these end-time signs are happening according to the precise timeline embedded in Daniel's prophecy. What's even more remarkable is that this code doesn't just predict events, it reveals their spiritual significance and purpose in God's ultimate plan. This level of mathematical precision can only come from an all-knowing God. What do you think about the possibility that every major historical event was predetermined and mathematically calculated? The most shocking aspect of Cahn's discovery isn't what the code reveals about the past, but what it unveils about the immediate future. According to the mathematical patterns embedded in Daniel's prophecy, we are currently living in the final phase of what he calls the completion cycle. This cycle began with specific historical markers that have already occurred, and it will conclude with the second coming of Jesus Christ. The code indicates that certain prophetic events must unfold in a specific sequence before Christ's return. And incredibly, most of these events have already happened. The rebirth of Israel in 1948 marked the beginning of this final cycle. The reunification of Jerusalem in 1967 represented the second major milestone. The recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital in recent years fulfilled another crucial requirement. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. The code reveals that we're now in the compression phase, where prophetic events will accelerate dramatically. What used to take decades to unfold will now happen in years. What used to take years will happen in months, and what used to take months will happen in weeks. This acceleration isn't random, it's mathematically predetermined. According to Daniel's prophecy, the code shows that we're approaching what Cahn calls the convergence point, where multiple prophetic timelines will intersect simultaneously. This convergence will trigger a series of events that will culminate in the most significant moment in human history, the return of Jesus Christ. The mathematical precision of this timeline is so exact that it eliminates any possibility of error or misinterpretation. Every calculation points to the same conclusion. We are living in the final generation before Christ's return. The code reveals that certain global events must occur before this return can happen, and these events are already beginning to unfold. The rise of global government systems, the persecution of Christians worldwide, the increase in natural disasters, the moral decay of society, all of these are not random occurrences, but precisely timed elements of God's prophetic plan. The acceleration of prophetic events is undeniable to those who have eyes to see. Comment convergence if you sense that time is running out and something massive is about to happen. What makes Jonathan Cahn's discovery so compelling is that it doesn't rely on spiritual discernment alone. It's backed by irrefutable mathematical evidence that anyone can verify. The code operates on what Cahn calls divine mathematics, a numbering system that reveals God's perfect timing in every aspect of human history. This isn't numerology or mysticism, it's biblical mathematics that demonstrates God's sovereignty over time itself. The Hebrew language, unlike any other language on earth, assigns numerical values to every letter, creating a mathematical dimension to biblical text that most people never discover. When Cahn applied this Hebrew numerical system to Daniel's prophecy, he uncovered patterns so precise that they could only have been designed by an omniscient God. The code reveals that historical events don't just happen randomly. They occur according to divine mathematical principles that were established before the foundation of the world. Every war, every revolution, every natural disaster, every rise and fall of empires has been precisely calculated and timed according to God's prophetic plan. But here's what will absolutely stagger you. The same mathematical system that predicted past events with 100% accuracy also reveals the timing of future events, including the exact parameters surrounding Christ's return. The code shows that we're not just approaching the end times, we're already deep within them. According to the mathematical patterns Cahn discovered, we're living in what he calls the final countdown phase, where every remaining prophetic event will unfold in rapid succession. This phase is characterized by an acceleration of both positive and negative events worldwide. On one hand, we're seeing an unprecedented harvest of souls coming to Christ. On the other hand, we're witnessing an escalation of persecution against believers and an increase in natural disasters and global conflicts. The code reveals that this acceleration isn't coincidental. It's the inevitable result of reaching a specific mathematical point in God's prophetic timeline. We're approaching what Cahn calls the point of no return, where the countdown to Christ's return becomes irreversible. The mathematical precision of God's timing is beyond human comprehension. Do you believe that every event in your life has been divinely calculated and timed according to God's perfect plan? The implications of this discovery extend far beyond academic interest or theological debate. They demand an immediate and personal response from every person alive today. Jonathan Cahn's revelation about Daniel's secret code isn't just information, it's a divine warning and a final call to salvation. The mathematical precision of this prophecy proves that we're living in the most significant period in human history, a time when every decision carries eternal consequences. According to the code, we're rapidly approaching what Cahn calls the point of divine intervention, when God will interrupt human history and establish his kingdom on earth. But before that glorious moment arrives, the code reveals that humanity will face a period of unprecedented tribulation and judgment. This isn't meant to cause fear among believers, but to create urgency about reaching the lost before it's too late. The mathematical patterns show that we're in the final window of opportunity for evangelism and salvation. Every day that passes brings us closer to the moment when that window will close forever. The code reveals that God's patience, while extraordinary, is not infinite. There's a mathematical point at which his judgment must begin, and according to Daniel's prophecy, we're rapidly approaching that point. This discovery should drive every believer to their knees in prayer and propel them into action. The code shows that these final days will be characterized by an unprecedented outpouring of God's Spirit, resulting in the greatest harvest of souls in human history. At the same time, those who reject Christ will face increasingly severe consequences as God's judgment begins to fall upon the earth. The mathematical precision of this timeline means that every person alive today has been sovereignly positioned to play a role in these final events. Whether you realize it or not, you're living in the most crucial moment in human history. The decisions you make today will determine not only your eternal destiny, but also your role in God's final plan for humanity. God has placed you in this generation for a specific purpose. Comment "chosen" if you believe God has positioned you to be part of His end-time plan. The most chilling aspect of Cahn's discovery is what the code reveals about the spiritual warfare that's intensifying as we approach Christ's return. According to the mathematical patterns embedded in Daniel's prophecy, we're entering a phase where the forces of darkness will launch their final assault against the kingdom of God. This isn't symbolic language, it's a literal description of spiritual battles that are already beginning to manifest in our physical world. The code shows that Satan understands the timeline better than most Christians do, and he's orchestrating a desperate campaign to prevent as many people as possible from accepting Christ before it's too late. This spiritual intensity is why we're seeing unprecedented levels of deception, persecution, and moral corruption throughout the world. The mathematical precision of the code reveals that these aren't random events. They're strategically timed attacks designed to coincide with specific prophetic milestones. As we move deeper into this final phase, the code predicts that this spiritual warfare will become increasingly visible and intense. False prophets will arise with signs and wonders so convincing that they would deceive even the elect, if possible. Global systems will emerge that will make it increasingly difficult for Christians to operate in society. Persecution will escalate from social ostracism to economic boycotts to physical violence. But here's what the code also reveals. Every increase in spiritual darkness will be matched by an increase in God's power and presence among His people. The same mathematical patterns that predict intensifying persecution also predict an unprecedented outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Miracles, healings, and supernatural manifestations will become commonplace among believers. The code shows that God is preparing His church for the greatest spiritual battle in human history, but He's also equipping them with the greatest spiritual power ever released. This isn't a time for fear, it's a time for faith. The mathematical certainty of God's victory is embedded in the same code that reveals the intensity of the coming battle. The spiritual battle is intensifying, but so is God's power among His people. What do you think will be the most challenging aspect of living as a Christian in these final days? Jonathan Cahn's analysis of the code reveals something that will revolutionize how you understand biblical prophecy. The mathematical patterns in Daniel don't just predict when Jesus will return, they reveal the specific conditions that must exist on earth before His return is possible. This discovery changes everything because it shows that we're not passive observers waiting for prophecy to unfold. We're active participants in fulfilling the very conditions that will trigger Christ's return. The code reveals that certain spiritual, political, and social milestones must be reached before the final countdown can begin. Many of these conditions are already being fulfilled in our generation, but some still require the active participation of believers worldwide. This understanding transforms the entire concept of end-time prophecy from passive waiting to active participation in God's prophetic plan. The mathematical precision of the code shows that every believer has a specific role to play in fulfilling these conditions. Your prayers, your witness, your faithfulness in small things are all mathematically significant in God's prophetic timeline. The code reveals that we're living in what Cahn calls the preparation phase, where God is positioning his people to fulfill their roles in the final events. This isn't just about personal salvation, it's about participating in the cosmic culmination of human history. The mathematical patterns show that certain numbers of people must be reached with the gospel, certain nations must be evangelized, and certain spiritual conditions must be met before Christ can return. This creates an incredible sense of urgency and purpose for every believer. The code proves that your individual actions and decisions are not insignificant. They're part of a divine mathematical equation that determines the timing of the most important event in human history. Every soul you reach for Christ, every prayer you pray, every act of faithfulness moves the prophetic timeline forward according to God's perfect plan. The mathematical certainty of this system means that Christ's return is not just inevitable, it's approaching at a rate that's directly influenced by the faithfulness of his people. Your role in God's end-time plan is mathematically significant. Comment participant if you're ready to actively participate in fulfilling the conditions that will trigger Christ's return. The global implications of this discovery are staggering when you consider what the code reveals about the current state of world affairs. According to the mathematical patterns Cahn uncovered, we're witnessing the precise fulfillment of prophetic conditions that have been building for centuries. The rise of global government systems, the push for a unified world religion, the development of technologies that make the mark of the beast possible. All of these developments are occurring according to the exact timeline embedded in Daniel's prophecy. But here's what most people don't realize. The code shows that these global developments aren't just political or economic. They're spiritually orchestrated to create the conditions necessary for both the rise of the Antichrist and the return of Jesus Christ. The mathematical precision of this timeline means that every major world event is serving God's ultimate purpose, even when it appears to be working against his kingdom. The code reveals that we're approaching what Cahn calls the convergence moment, when political, economic, spiritual, and natural events will align to create the perfect conditions for the final phase of human history. This convergence is already beginning to manifest in ways that are both terrifying and exciting. On one hand, we're seeing the emergence of global systems that will eventually be used to persecute believers and control humanity. On the other hand, we're witnessing an unprecedented spiritual awakening that's spreading across the globe. The code shows that these seemingly contradictory developments are actually part of the same prophetic equation. As darkness increases, light increases. As persecution intensifies, revival accelerates. As global systems consolidate power, God's kingdom advances. The mathematical patterns reveal that we're not watching the world spiral out of control, we're witnessing the precise fulfillment of God's prophetic plan. Every crisis, every conflict, every natural disaster is serving to accelerate the timeline toward Christ's return. The code proves that God is in complete control of global events, and everything is unfolding according to his perfect mathematical design. The convergence of global events is undeniable to those who understand prophetic timing. How do you think the average person will respond when they realize that every major world event has been prophetically predetermined? What makes Cahn's discovery so urgent is that the code reveals we're rapidly approaching what he calls the point of no return. a mathematical moment in the prophetic timeline when certain irreversible events will be triggered. According to the patterns embedded in Daniel's prophecy, we're not just approaching the end times, we're already in the final phase of the final phase. The mathematical precision of this timeline means that every day that passes brings us closer to events that will change the world forever. The code shows that we're living in the last generation that will experience normal life as we know it. Future generations will live in a completely different world, one that's been transformed by the prophetic events that are about to unfold. This isn't speculation or fear-mongering, it's mathematical certainty based on the precise patterns that have predicted every major historical event with 100% accuracy. The code reveals that we're approaching a period of accelerated change, where decades of prophetic fulfillment will occur in months or even weeks. This acceleration is already beginning to manifest in ways that are visible to those who understand the signs. Political systems are shifting rapidly. Natural disasters are increasing in frequency and intensity. Technological advances are creating unprecedented possibilities for both good and evil, and spiritual warfare is intensifying on every front. The mathematical patterns show that this acceleration will continue until it reaches a crescendo moment when multiple prophetic timelines converge simultaneously. This convergence will trigger a series of events that will culminate in the most significant moment in human history, the return of Jesus Christ. But before that glorious moment arrives, the code reveals that humanity will face a period of unprecedented tribulation and testing. The mathematical precision of this timeline means that every person alive today has been sovereignly positioned to experience these final events. Whether you're ready or not, whether you believe or not, these events are approaching with mathematical certainty. The only question is, will you be prepared when they arrive? The acceleration of prophetic events is undeniable. Comment acceleration if you sense that time is running out and we're approaching the point of no return. The final revelation that Jonathan Cahn discovered in Daniel's code is perhaps the most important of all. The mathematical patterns don't just reveal when Jesus will return. They reveal the exact signs that will precede his return, and these signs are already beginning to manifest in our world today. According to the code, we're living in what Cahn calls the sign season, a period when the prophetic markers that herald Christ's return will become increasingly visible and undeniable. The mathematical precision of these signs means that they're not random occurrences. They're divinely orchestrated events that serve as final warnings to humanity. The code reveals that these signs will manifest in 4 distinct categories: spiritual signs, natural signs, political signs, and supernatural signs. Each category follows a specific mathematical pattern that builds in intensity as we approach the moment of Christ's return. The spiritual signs include an unprecedented global awakening among believers, accompanied by an equally unprecedented deception among unbelievers. The natural signs include an increase in earthquakes, storms, and other natural disasters that follow precise mathematical patterns. The political signs include the rise of global government systems and the persecution of Christians worldwide. The supernatural signs include an increase in miracles, healings, and spiritual manifestations among believers, as well as an increase in false signs and wonders among unbelievers. What makes these signs so significant is that they're not just isolated events. They're interconnected components of a larger prophetic equation that's rapidly approaching completion. The code shows that we're currently experiencing the early stages of this sign season, but the intensity will increase dramatically as we approach the final moment. The mathematical patterns reveal that these signs will serve as both warnings and confirmations, giving people final opportunities to respond to the gospel before it's too late. Every sign that manifests is another mathematical proof that we're living in the most significant period in human history. The code proves that Jesus' return is not just possible, it's inevitable, and it's approaching faster than most people realize. The signs of Christ's return are manifesting with increasing frequency and intensity. What do you think will be the most convincing sign that will cause people to realize Jesus is about to return? As we reach the end of this incredible journey through Jonathan Cahn's discovery of Daniel's secret code, one truth emerges with mathematical certainty. We are living in the final moments before the return of Jesus Christ. The evidence is overwhelming, the patterns are undeniable, and the timeline is precise. Every calculation, every historical marker, every prophetic sign points to the same inescapable conclusion. This generation will witness the most significant event in human history. But here's what makes this discovery so personally urgent. The same mathematical precision that reveals the timing of Christ's return also reveals that your eternal destiny depends on the decisions you make right now, in this moment, as you're hearing these words. The code doesn't just predict global events, it reveals that every individual has been sovereignly positioned to play a role in these final moments. Your response to this revelation will determine not only your eternal destiny, but also your participation in God's ultimate plan for humanity. If you've never accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, the mathematical certainty of His return means that time is running out for you to make that decision. The code reveals that we're rapidly approaching the point where the opportunity for salvation will be withdrawn forever. If you're already a believer, this discovery should ignite a fire of urgency in your heart to reach the lost and fulfill your role in God's end-time plan. The mathematical patterns show that every prayer you pray, every witness you share, every act of faithfulness moves the prophetic timeline forward according to God's perfect design. The clock is ticking, the signs are manifest, and the return of Jesus Christ is imminent. Don't let this moment pass without making sure you're ready. If this video has impacted your heart, hit that like button and subscribe, because what we're about to reveal in our next video will show you the exact biblical strategy for thriving during these final days. The greatest adventure in human history is about to begin, and God wants you to be part of it. Are you ready for what's coming next?